The throne room of Nathara Prime hung suspended above a dying star, its crystalline walls reflecting the crimson death throes of the celestial body below. Ambassador Marcus Chun stood alone before Queen Velithra, his human frame dwarfed by the towering architecture designed to intimidate lesser species. The queen herself sat motionless on her star throne, navy blue skin gleaming like polished sapphire in the dim light, her blonde hair cascading over armored shoulders in stark contrast to her alien features. Her violet eyes, cold as the void between stars, studied him with the detachment of a predator considering prey. Behind her, the ruins of her empire's glory loomed. Shattered columns bore the scars of humanity's orbital bombardment from the Third Contact War. 15 billion of her people had died in that conflict, turned to ash when human dreadnoughts had glassed 3 colony worlds. The queen had not forgotten. No one expected her to forgive. You come with empty hands to a throne built on the bones of your victims, Velithra said, her voice carrying the harmonics that marked her species' royal bloodline. Tell me why I should not add yours to the foundation. Marcus met her gaze without flinching. Because I didn't come to apologize for winning. I came to explain why we're still fighting a war that ended 3 years ago. Silence fell like a hammer. The queen's fingers tightened on her throne's armrests, energy crackling between her knuckles. Around the chamber, her honor guard shifted, weapons humming to life. One word from her, and Marcus would be molecular vapor. Instead, something unexpected happened. Marcus smiled, not with diplomacy or fear, but with genuine amusement. Your Majesty, we've been killing each other for 6 years over a clerical error. Some genius in our stellar cartography department marked your sacred breeding grounds as uninhabited mineral-rich asteroids. By the time anyone realized the mistake, we'd already strip-mined your gods. The absurdity of it hung in the air. 6 years of war. Trillions dead. Fleets shattered. Worlds burned. All because someone couldn't read a survey report properly. Velithra stared at him, her expression unreadable. Then something shifted in her violet eyes. Her shoulders began to shake. A sound emerged from her throat that hadn't been heard in this chamber since before the war began. Laughter. It started as a low rumble, then built into something genuine and terrible, echoing through the throne room like rolling thunder. Her honor guard froze, uncertain. The queen laughed until tears streaked her navy blue cheeks, until she had to grip her throne for support. Clerical error, she gasped between peals of laughter. We nearly exterminated each other over clerical error. Marcus allowed himself a cautious smile. For the first time since the war began, peace seemed possible. Then the doors exploded inward, and the apex hunters arrived. They entered like living nightmares, each one a masterwork of evolutionary perfection. 7 apex hunters, their segmented armor gleaming obsidian black, moved with the fluid grace of creatures born to kill. They were taller than humans, broader than the Queen's warriors, their 4 arms ending in claws that could shred starship hull plating. Behind their faceless helmets, clusters of predatory eyes tracked every movement in the throne room. Their leader, Warlord Krathix, approached the throne with deliberate slowness. His species had never bowed to anyone. They had conquered 43 star systems through pure martial supremacy. And they served the queen only because she paid them obscene wealth to hunt her enemies. My queen, Krathix's voice rumbled through his helmet's vocalizer. We heard your laughter. Laughter at words spoken by this. He gestured dismissively at Marcus. A human. The weakest warrior species in known space. The warmth drained from Velithra's expression. Warlord, you forget yourself. No, my queen, you forget. Krathix turned to face Marcus fully. This species, these soft, fragile humans, they hide behind their ships and their missiles. They wage war from orbit because they are too weak to fight with honor. They are cowards who would rather burn worlds than face warriors in combat. Marcus said nothing. He'd heard it before. Humanity's reputation in the galaxy was complicated. They'd won the war against the Netherans through overwhelming firepower and tactical ruthlessness, not through glorious single combat. Other species viewed human warfare as dishonorable, the tactics of weaklings too afraid to test their strength blade to blade. The human made a joke, Krathix continued, circling Marcus like a shark. And you laughed. You, who lost billions to their orbital cowardice, now laugh with the enemy. He stopped directly in front of Marcus, looming over him. I challenge this human to prove his species worthy of your laughter. Let him face me in the traditional combat of warriors. If humans are not weak, let him demonstrate it with his body, not his machines. Marcus looked up at the towering alien hunter. The Apex were legendary. Their warriors trained from birth in every known form of combat. They had reflexes 3 times faster than humans, strength that could bend steel, and centuries of martial tradition. No human had ever survived a traditional challenge match against an Apex. Warlord, Belithra's voice carried warning. This is not, I accept, Marcus said quietly. The throne room fell silent. Even Krathix seemed surprised by the human's response. You accept? The Apex warlord's laughter was cruel. Brave for a coward. Tell me, human, have you ever even held a blade? Or will you request your orbital fleet save you when I begin to carve? Marcus met his gaze calmly. I said I accept. Name your terms. Krathix's faceless helmet tilted, considering. Then he gestured to his fellow hunters. 7 of us. 7 of you, oh, but you came alone. How unfortunate. His mockery echoed through the chamber. Very well. You against one of us. Traditional rules. No weapons but what the arena provides, combat until death or submission. If you win, humanity earns respect. When you die, your species will be forever known as the weaklings who couldn't defend their own honor. And if I win? Marcus asked. Then I will personally apologize to your corpse, human. Because you will not win. The combat arena materialized in the center of the throne room, holographic fields forming a circular pit 30 meters across. The floor was bare metal, scarred from thousands of previous challenges. Weapon racks phased into existence along the perimeter blades of every length. Impact hammers, plasma-edged axes, neural whips. Traditional Apex combat allowed combatants to choose from standardized weapons. Ensuring skill determined the victor, not equipment advantage. Marcus stepped into the arena, removing his diplomatic jacket and rolling up his sleeves. Beneath the formal attire, his forearms bore scars, old burns, blade marks, the signature wounds of someone who'd seen ground combat during the war. Most ambassadors never left their ships. Marcus had been something else before diplomacy claimed him. Krathix selected a massive warblade, its edge humming with molecular sharpening fields. He moved through combat forms with practiced ease, the blade whistling through air, showing off, intimidating the prey. Marcus walked to the weapon racks and selected 2 items, a standard combat knife, barely longer than his hand, and a coil of monofilament wire thin enough to be nearly invisible. The Apex warriors watching laughed. The knife was a joke against Krathix's armor and reach. The wire was a tool, not a weapon. That is what you choose to defend humanity's honor? Krathix called out. A toy and string? I will make your death quick, human. You deserve that much for bravery. Appreciated, Marcus said flatly, testing the wire's tension between his hands. Queen Belithra leaned forward on her throne. Navy blue fingers steepled in front of her face. Her violet eyes were unreadable, but something in her posture suggested intense focus. She'd fought humans during the war. She knew something the Apex didn't. The arena's holographic boundaries solidified, energy fields humming to life. Once combat began, nothing could pass through them until one combatant fell. "Begin," Velithra commanded. Krathix exploded into motion with terrifying speed. His four arms became a blur of strikes, the war blade carving the air where Marcus had been a microsecond before. The human rolled, came up moving, already circling. The apex pursued, each strike powerful enough to cleave Marcus in half, but none connected. Marcus moved like water, like smoke, each movement economical and precise. He'd studied apex combat doctrine for months during the war, analyzing their patterns, their preferences, their instincts. They were apex predators, yes, but predators were predictable. Krathix pressed the attack, growing frustrated. His blade struck sparks from the arena floor. His claws raked empty air. The human was always somewhere else, always moving, never engaging. The watching apex began to murmur. This wasn't how prey behaved. Stand and fight. Krathix roared, lunging with all four arms extended. Marcus finally stopped retreating. He stepped inside the apex's guard, far too close for the warblade to strike effectively. His knife flashed once, twice, 3 times precision strikes at the gaps in Krathix's armor plating where flexible joints allowed movement. Each strike drew dark blood. They were shallow cuts, superficial, insulting. Krathix backhanded Marcus with overwhelming force, sending the human flying across the arena. Marcus hit the energy barrier and dropped, but was already rolling back to his feet, somehow still moving despite the impact that should have shattered his spine. "You fight like an insect," Krathix snarled, purple blood dripping from his joints. "Stinging and fleeing. No honor. No courage." "Honor doesn't win wars," Marcus replied, circling again. "Survival does." The fight continued. Minutes stretched. Krathix was faster, stronger, more experienced. But Marcus kept moving, kept cutting, kept bleeding the apex warrior from 100 minor wounds. The alien's movements began to slow fractionally as blood loss accumulated. The watching apex shifted uneasily. This wasn't how challenges ended. The human should have died in the first exchange. Then Marcus made his move. Krathix charged again, and this time Marcus didn't dodge. He dove forward, sliding beneath the apex's strike. As he passed under the warrior's legs, his hands moved in a blur. The monofilament wire practically invisible, impossibly strong wrapped around Krathix's ankles. Marcus rolled to his feet behind the apex, wire grip tight in both hands. He pulled. The effect was immediate and devastating. The wire, drawn taut with the full force of Marcus's body weight and momentum, cut through armor, through flesh, through bone. Krathix's legs gave out, severed at the ankles. The mighty hunter crashed to the arena floor, purple blood spreading in a rapidly expanding pool. The throne room erupted in shock. The watching apex warriors surged toward the arena barrier, weapons raised. This was impossible. Their warlord was falling. Treachery! One of them roared. The weapon was forbiddance. "The wire was on the rack," Marcus said coldly, standing over Krathix. "Traditional rules. Any weapon in the arena is permitted." He looked up at the other apex hunters. "Your warlord chose to see a tool where he should have seen a weapon. He assumed I would fight his way. That was his mistake." Krathix writhed on the arena floor, reaching for Marcus with his 4 arms. The human stepped back, watching the apex bleed out. No mercy, no hesitation. The cold efficiency of a soldier who'd done this before. "Humans," Krathix's voice was weakening. "Humans fight without honor." "We fight to win," Marcus replied. "Honor is for species that can afford it." The other 6 apex hunters were beyond reason now. Their warlord lay dying, defeated by the creature they'd called weakest in the galaxy. The insult burned like acid. As one, they rushed toward the arena barrier. "Stop!" Queen Valithra commanded, rising from her throne. They didn't listen. The Apex had lost warriors before, had seen warlords fall in honorable combat. But this was different. This was humiliation. The barriers dropped as they forced their way through, and they entered the arena together, all 6 of them, weapons raised and death in their movements. Marcus didn't run. He stood his ground as the 6 Apex hunters surrounded him, bloodied knife in one hand, the remaining wire coiled in the other. "You want to see how humans fight?" he asked quietly. "You want to understand why we won the war? Let me show you." What happened next wasn't combat. It was a masterclass in human warfare, brutal, efficient, and utterly ruthless. The first hunter charged, war axe raised high. Marcus moved low, cutting the Achilles equivalent on the Apex's leg, then drove his knife up through the soft tissue onto the hunter's jaw while the creature was off balance. He left the blade embedded, snatched the falling war axe from the dying alien's grip. The second hunter came from behind. Marcus spun, used the axe to deflect a blade strike, then brought his elbow into the Apex's throat with crushing force. As the alien staggered back, Marcus reversed his grip and buried the axe in the hunter's chest cavity. 2 down. 4 remaining. They came at him together now, learning. Marcus was faster than they'd expected, more vicious, more willing to use their own momentum against them. He targeted joints, eyes, the vulnerable gaps in their armor. Every movement served a purpose. Every strike aimed to maim or kill. The third hunter fell when Marcus used the wire like a garrote, looping it around the Apex's neck and pulling, with such force that the monofilament decapitated the alien in a spray of purple gore. Fourth went down screaming when Marcus shattered its knee joints with precise kicks, then crushed its skull with a fallen warhammer. The final 2 Apex hunters hesitated. Around them lay their brothers, their legendary warriors, reduced to corpses by a single human. Marcus stood in the center of the arena, soaked in purple blood, breathing hard but still standing. In his hands he held weapons taken from the fallen, and his eyes held the cold calculation of a predator who'd been pretending to be prey. "Last chance," Marcus said, his voice eerily calm. "Yield and live. Come at me and join them." The 2 hunters looked at each other. Then, driven by pride and fury beyond reason, they attacked in perfect coordination, one high, one low, perfectly timed to give no avenue of escape. Marcus didn't try to escape. He stepped into the attack, accepting a glancing blow from one blade while he drove his captured war blade through the first hunter's faceplate. The Apex crumpled. The final hunter's momentum carried it past Marcus, and in that moment of vulnerability, Marcus grabbed the neural whip from a fallen warrior's belt and activated it. The whip cracked with bioelectric fury, wrapping around the last hunter's neck. The Apex convulsed as lethal voltage coursed through its nervous system, then collapsed, smoke rising from its armor. Silence fell across the throne room. 7 Apex hunters lay dead or dying. The human envoy stood alone, painted in their blood, surrounded by the consequences of their pride. Marcus dropped the whip and turned to face Queen Valithra. The navy-skinned monarch sat motionless on her throne, her violet eyes wide with something that might have been fear or might have been understanding. "Your Majesty," Marcus said formally, as if he hadn't just massacred the galaxy's most feared warriors, "I apologize for the mess. But they challenged me. Traditional rules. To the death." Valithra rose slowly from her throne. Her blonde hair caught the light from the dying star below, framing her alien features. When she spoke, her voice carried clearly through the chamber. "I understand now," she said. "I understand why you won the war. Why my fleets burned. Why my worlds fell. She descended the steps toward the arena, her honor guard parting before her. We thought you were weak because you wouldn't fight us blade to blade. We thought you were cowards because you struck from orbit. She stopped at the arena's edge, looking down at the carnage. But you're not cowards. You're practical. You fight to win, not for glory. You use every advantage, every weapon, every tactic that serves victory. Her violet eyes met Marcus's. We fought for honor. You fought for survival. And in the calculus of war, survival always defeats honor. Marcus climbed out of the arena, accepting a cloth from an attendant to wipe the worst of the blood from his hands. The Apex called humans weak. But we're the species that survived our own world trying to kill us for millennia. We're the species that turned our home planet's deadliest predators into pets. We're the species that looked at the vast emptiness of space and decided it was ours to claim. He met the Queen's gaze evenly. We're not the strongest. We're not the fastest. But we're the most dangerous because we'll do whatever it takes to survive. And when you back a survivor into a corner, he gestured at the dead hunters. This is what happens. Valithra was quiet for a long moment. Then she extended her hand, the Nethran gesture of respect between equals. The war is over, she said. Truly over. Not because we're defeated, but because I finally understand who we were fighting. She gripped Marcus's hand firmly. Humanity is not our enemy. Humanity is the predator we mistook for prey. I will not make that mistake again. Marcus returned the grip. And we'll try not to strip mine anyone's gods in the future, clerical error or otherwise. Despite everything, the blood, the death, the horror, Valithra laughed again. This time, the sound carried hope instead of bitterness. Word of what happened in the throne room spread across the galaxy within hours. The Apex Hunters, the galaxy's most feared warriors, slaughtered by a lone human envoy. The footage was watched billions of times, studied by military academies, analyzed by xenobiologists trying to understand humanity's paradoxical nature. They were weak, yes. Individually inferior to most species in strength and speed. But they were also the most dangerous species in known space, because they understood something others didn't. In war, there are no rules. There is only survival. And humanity had been surviving against all odds since before they reached the stars. The galaxy learned that day to be very, very careful about calling humans weak, because the weak don't survive. And humanity had been surviving and winning for longer than most species had existed. They weren't the strongest warriors, but they were the ones still standing when the fighting stopped, and that made all the difference. The end.